I have been joined by Joyce Zempare, who's the Deputy National Communications Director of the NPP. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Grace, we're doing well. And
Thank
yourself?
I'm good. Thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
And I've also been joined by Joyce Bawah Mogtari, who's the special aide to the former President, John Mahama. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us.
An absolute pleasure to be here.
We'll take a look at our first story. I'm reading from the Daily Graphic, and it says, President orders no travel for public officials, measure to prevent COVID-19. So President Akua has temporarily suspended all foreign travels for all public officials as part of measures to prevent the outbreak of the coronavirus. The directive affects all sector ministers and their deputies, regional ministers and their deputies, metropolitan, municipal and district chief executives, as well as heads of government agencies and the chief of staff. So it goes on to talk about the number of people, the number of records we have of people who have been affected by coronavirus, according to the World Health Organization. As at yesterday, 109,570 people had actually been reported to have coronavirus, and 3,809 of them have died so far. So the president is hoping that in addition to the hospitals that have been assigned to deal with coronavirus cases and him telling people to, not shake hands, this ban would also help with fighting coronavirus. So, Joyce, I'll start with you on this one.
Let me say good morning to yourself, my sister, your crew, and the good people of Ghana. Let me extend my sincere greetings to the President of the Republic and all stakeholders involved. Yeah, we know of the outbreak of this corona COVID-19 that started from China, and it's rippling fate on other nations. When it started, we thought it was within the Asian territory, only for us to realize that it had moved to other continents. Now, I don't think which of the other continents you can talk of that has not been affected by the spread of this coronavirus that we're talking about. And as part of government measures, I know there's just an additional layer to other precautions that we had to undertake to make sure that we prevent ourselves from also contracting this that is out there. That's good. It is, at least we all know, we've heard there's been a public education, there's been advocacy, there's been other measures that have been put in place, like government said. In fact, and just a day before, the British who came around and then was praising Ghana for the measures that in fact, what he witnessed at our airport. And we say the airport is not the only. We know that's where we have major people coming in through this country, but our borders too. And I know clinics and other things, government have made provisions for other clinics at the vantage point to make sure that whoever moves into this country is given a thorough check. And yesterday I witnessed one beauty. I don't know how widespread it is, but we had a program at one hotel, and I went in. Before you enter, they have the scanner, they have a nurse seated there who will take your temperature, they have the sanitizer, which I think is a very good move that we should look at. It is replicated everywhere, especially our churches. Are we doing that at our churches where most people converge? Are we doing that at our mosques? Are we doing that places where people converge a lot? What are the measures that we'll be doing? It should be one thing that our religious bodies and other sects should also take up. That coming this Sunday, there are church activities that go on throughout the week. What are the other measures that we'll put in place, same as this, so that whoever comes in and go out within our church and things will make sure that they are well protected, they are thoroughly taken through these procedures to make sure that no one, any slight indications that one person is suspected to having this virus is taken care of, quarantine out of the system. So far, we say that I learned that the report has stand to be correct, about 40 people that we suspected that had this virus has been tested negative. Mm-hmm. We pray and we're hoping that it will continue. But it gets a little worrying when you hear neighboring countries like Togo, Burkina Faso also having their first a share of whatever is happening. Then it becomes a wake-up call to us. It becomes so scary to people that what are we waiting for? Is it that it went through? But we know if we are able to take the precautions so well, like we are saying, to prevent this from entry into our system, into our sub-region, into this country, I think it will be good for us. So, because, the figures started dropping, and then all of a sudden we've heard it's also escalating again. We know that World Health Organization and other institutions are working around the clock so that they'll find a cure for it. We pray that it does happen very soon, because you can see that across the globe, all programs, activities have been cancelled. I was due for a program next month. Only from yesterday we had an email that they've called off the program, and it's happened across the globe. So it is not far-fetched from any other person saying that this is it. We all have to take the precautions. We need to take it so necessary and very important. Say that, look, it is about individual lives. It is not about one person being affected, but when it enters into a home or a country, it becomes a major disaster for us all. And we need to fight this and prevent this kind of, I can say it's a health disaster that has hit the globe. So we all need to work towards it to make sure that we are safe and sound.
Okay. Now, of course, the government has allocated some hospitals also in the regional areas, but the Ministry of Health came out to say that they needed at least 35 million Ghana cedis to prepare for it, and we know that they've received less than half of that. So how does that help with the preparation?
You see, it is an ongoing process. You need to start from a place. You understand? The government, in fact, made provision of some funds. Then through the World Health Organization, they were saying that, look, they think this is their estimated cost that will help in curtailing this. But you could see that so far, a lot of measures have been put in place. And as we move along, because there are selected hospitals that has been
we have it on all the 16
regions. And
but
all
the funding bit, how do we address
that?
The
fund, it's not cast in brass and stone. It's still open. Government is still giving out what as at when it needs to give some funding to them for them to work. We understand. That when it happens like that, in fact, it gets a bit jittering. When you listen to the records out there, then it's setting jittering sort of things setting. So people become so alarmed and all those things. We'll tell people to stay calm. Everything's under control, and government will make provisions for anything that is needed to make sure that we curtail this health disaster.
Okay.
Our country.
Thank you. Joyce, coronavirus and President ordering the public officials to not travel as a means to avoid contracting the virus.
Well, good morning, Dziffa, and good morning to your listeners out there, and good morning to my family in Salaga South. I have actually formed the habit of always reaching out and saying hello, because I know that they follow very closely my activities. So on a morning such as this, I'm particularly delighted to be here. We have rather very, very, I don't know how to describe it, news that I'm sure we are all slightly uncomfortable about, that it does leave enormous cause for us to worry. It also generates some trepidation. And I think for our parts of the world where we are usually people who gather a lot, we like to converge and congregate, and we like to share basically in terms of how we greet, our felicitations, our celebrations, name it. We are a country of a people that likes to engage on a very personal level. Physical touching, physical engagement, hugs, handshakes. In fact, this morning when I got here, I forgot to nod because, genuinely I've always been the sort of person who likes to say hello by just nodding and giving you a very broad smile. If I'm very close to you, I'll probably reach out and hug you. But ordinarily, I'm not particularly a fan of shaking hands that much. In fact, I think until I relocated here, I didn't know that shaking hands was such a common thing, really, So it actually took a very long time for me to adapt to that sort of lifestyle of shaking and touching people all the time. I think that the call by the President, Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, at this time may be a touch late, but of course it is welcome. I'm sure, judging by all the reports from other jurisdictions, he himself is left with no doubt that this is a matter that is escalating, that indeed for the time being Ghana has yet to announce or report a case of the coronavirus, but considering the rate of spread, what I have found very interesting is that not as many people are dying anymore. Yeah. It appears there's been a certain level of containment, but the multiplier effect is being felt now across the world. Indeed, if you realize what is happening in Italy, for example, it leaves enormous room for concern that a whole city has had to be put in quarantine to avoid needless spread, that a huge shopping center is totally devoid of any human activity, that the whole of the New York Stock Exchange has suffered enormous economic loss as a result of the ramifications of this outbreak, tells you that you cannot be too well prepared, that any level of preparedness, any amount of readiness is welcome at any time. And for that reason, I welcome this call by His Excellency the President. Indeed, I'm sure you recall that President Mahama had cause even to put out a statement advising all of us to be careful around one another, to take our personal hygiene very seriously, to take up the habit of washing our hands. But then we also know that around here is not every environment that has facilities for you to avail yourself of the hand washing that is required now, of keeping your hands away from your face, of avoiding sneezing or coughing around other people. You know, we have this existence that just allows us to correlate and commingle, as they say, in a certain manner. That actually would make an outbreak of this kind a very, very, very worrying one. You know, you notice that in Europe now, people are avoiding the trains, they are avoiding buses. Just wherever you would have more than 10, 15 people leaves enormous cause for worry. I think that for our part, a lot of voices have come into this conversation. I recall the minority had called even earlier on the powers that be to evacuate our students from the Wuhan province. I realized that at the time, government's response was that it was a lot safer for them to remain there. But judging by how long this has now taken, nobody knows when that particular province would be in recovery mode. We don't even know when the spread of this virus would eventually be contained or at least stopped. Indeed, we are even informed by the World Health Organization that the vaccine that is actually in the pipeline has only just started to be tested. In fact, even getting people who will be willing to be used as guinea pigs, as we normally do, is becoming even a challenge for them. And I'm sure that history is also a guiding factor for us in all of this, because I realize that when the SARS broke out, for example, between 2002 and 2003, it took almost 5 years before it entered Africa. I am sure it happened even for H1N1 in 2009. We all know how it happened even with the Ebola outbreak. So these are matters that cannot be wished away. We would only continue to hope and pray that the measures that we've put in place are adequate, that they are sufficient, that the workers trained to handle it are also efficient enough to help us all contain it should there be an outbreak. But I think prevention, as they say, is always better than cure. So whatever measures are being introduced, whether early or too late in the day, I think are usually also very welcome. This is a national issue. It is devoid of any partisan preferences or choices, really, because it would not select who it infects or who would catch it. It will be something that Ghanaians and citizens generally, and this is a global threat, really, to many things. It's not purely economic. It also threatens our very existence. It is a matter that concerns each and everybody. And I know that this is a global village. We are all globalists one way or the other. We have relatives, we have family, we have businesses in many other jurisdictions. We have a way that the world actually just relates one country to another, one continent to the next. Any ailment, any disease, any outbreak that has certain ramifications for the world generally is something that must concern all leaders across the globe. I think it is also instructive that finally our leadership has also realized that time is of the essence. I observed that the president actually visited the Kotoka International Airport to investigate their preparedness. I hope same is being done for other entry points, such as our ports, such as our borders. Note that Ghana and Nigeria, Ghana and Benin, Ghana and Togo, Ghana and Burkina Faso, we just traverse into each other's boundaries just like that. These are all areas that also leave enormous room for concern. But I think immediately we must take our personal surroundings very seriously. We must start to be more conscious of our hygiene, especially our personal hygiene. We must also be conscious of how much we touch. Our children are in school, our teachers. Usually I tell my staff, look, these days you all have to be careful because when they leave your environment, you don't know who they interact with. You don't know where they go to. You must be sure that they are all taking similar precautions as you and your family are taking. So I think that we should just be each other's keeper. I think to a large extent, government will do its part. Our political leaders will do their part in terms of the advocacy, in terms of educating us, in terms of introducing travel bans, even though I would still have wished that the efforts that were put in by Britain and America to evacuate their citizens in some places in China and Japan would similarly have been applied to us as a people. But maybe they had different advisories that actually encouraged some protocols. So if that was what they were adhering to, as citizens, we are all bound by that. But I still wish and I had hoped that at the time when this outbreak started, that these children would at least have been evacuated, so at least they will be home, where for now we're still somehow, thanks to the good Lord, being protected. But I've heard that there's been an outbreak in Togo, there's been one also in Benin and in Burkina Faso, and I think in Nigeria too. So beyond saying that maybe it's just a matter of time, let me say also that the efforts that are being put in place would actually ensure prevention. I think it is always better than waiting for it to happen before you seek a cure. But be that as it may, we look forward to a lot more being done, that there's adequate training, that there are adequate quarantine facilities. I was informed that there's one of these special facilities that is actually still closed and not open for use. I do hope that eventually such facilities will be prepared also to receive victims in the unlikely event that this virus actually arrives here. But of course, I'm also told somehow that there's also a certain economic explanation to why it actually enters Africa slowly. It is because we do not have a very large market share of the tourism. So not many people are moving around. I am sure that may have informed the decision by government to actually enforce a travel ban as a way of setting an example so that all can follow. In fact, I had meetings in England, but of course, once this outbreak occurred, I decided, well, it's best to stay here. So unless you really have to go somewhere, it is absolutely necessary, that it is life-threatening, that is a matter you cannot postpone or reschedule, then fine, so be it. But I'm told even now that human resource departments in the United Kingdom in particular, if you travel out, you're allowed the leave, you're allowed the holiday, but when you return, you'd have to stay at home for 2 weeks. Wow. And I know someone who wanted to go for medical attention who would also have to stay indoors for 4 days before you'd have access to the medical facility. So everybody is doing their very best to ensure that even if it does break out, that at best you contain it. This morning we had news about the United Kingdom Health Minister who was actually contracted it. We heard about Pope Francis also. So it tells you.
In the US.
Absolutely, exactly. So we need to take some very serious precautions. But I think that it also behoves on our leaders to do even more and to actually grant persons who have been put in charge of this task whatever it is they need in terms of resource allocation, so that at least we are all given the assurance that in the unlikely event that there's an outbreak, we have adequate facilities, we have adequate, well-trained personal health care officials, that the doctors are well prepared. I recall that when Ebola broke out, there was a very, very well-coordinated response team. And I hope that we will replicate same even now to ensure that we do not allow this outbreak to get here and find us unprepared.
Thank you very much. We'll go for a break now. This is still Breakfast Daily on CCTV. If you want us to hear from you, the hashtag is Breakfast Daily, and the WhatsApp line is 05505858832. If you're outside Ghana, the country code is +233. Up next, we'll be looking at Imani Africa saying that Ghana will lose $150 million if we get this new voter register. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is still Breakfast Daily on Citi TV. Thank you so much for staying with us. Again, if you want us to hear from you, the hashtag to use is Breakfast Daily. And if you want to reach us directly, our WhatsApp line is 0550585832. If you're outside Ghana, the country code is +233. I still have with me Joyce Zempare, who is the Deputy National Communications Director of the NPP, and Joyce Bawah Mogtari, who is the special aide to the former President Mahama. Before the break, we were discussing the coronavirus and the president placing a ban on travel for all government officials. Now we'll be looking at the EC's voter register. Imani Africa is adding its voice to the conversation and saying that Ghana stands to lose $150 million if we take this new voter register. So I'm reading from citinewsroom.com, and it says here, Ghana to lose about $150 million if EC procures new biometric system. It's coming from Imani Africa. Imani Africa has provided yet another reason why Ghana's Electoral Commission should abort the purchase of a new voter register or voter management system with its complementary accessories ahead of the 2020 general elections. The think tank insists that the country will lose about $150 million if the commission goes ahead to procure the system, as well as compiling a new voters register. So I'm going to break it down to exactly what Bryce Simmons, who's the vice president of Imani, said, and I'm quoting him. This is not necessarily about this administration. This has been going on for years, and it turns out that we are spending too much. You have an idea of how much a laptop, camera, and scanner cost, and you put it together and add a printer. When someone tells you that it's $3,500 to $4,000, you don't have to be a genius to know. You have to start wondering whether we are getting value for money. And it's not therefore surprising that countries like Zimbabwe and the likes get it far cheaper than we do. We are spending at most 3 times more than what Zimbabwe does. He goes on to talk about, if we add all of this up, the simple conclusion since 2011, it is a lie that we have not bought any new equipment, and we've spent millions of dollars. From the parliamentary records, we've seen almost $80 million since then buying new things. So if we have to do anything, we just have to add a little more repairs, do a little maintenance, buy a few things, then we will get to $74 million that they said you need to improve the current system. If you do all of that, and he goes on to talk about, if you get the actual voter register and you register 17 million people all over again, then your cost will be up to $150 million that we are blowing away, and no one is explaining to us why we are spending such amount on a new voter register. So, Joyce Zempare, I'll start with you on this angle that Imani Africa is looking at with a new voter register.
Well, thank you once again. With the price quotation, let me say, I can't speak for the EC. I don't know what went into their figures for them to arrive at their figure. But also when you look at the Imani Ghana's own pricing of the various things, you realize that it's going to cost about $56 million to purchase some of the things. And then I was adding up, in fact, if you look at the total cost of the items, it was around $83 million. Then they said other contingencies will sum up to $150 million. So what are the contingencies that they're looking at? How did they arrive at that figure? Because we need the EC to give us that cost and not Imani. So I want them to come, they should clarify on that, how the contingencies alone will cost us about $70 million. I want to know much about it. And yet, I think with this, EC made mention about, in fact, you could see in Imani's own statement that they think it will cost about some $73 million to repair the old kits and other things. And then EC had gone further to tell us, look, this is what we think is right for us. Look, we've read statements, we've heard various commentaries about the obsolete nature of our machines, where even in a statement that was cited to the EC, even make mention of the machines having its end of life. What does it imply? Meaning that it's got to a place that they think we need to do away with the old stuff that we had. You see, this has been on.
But as far as the absolute nature is concerned, Mr. Maxwell Bogard, who is part of the people who worked on the old one that we're currently using, he came out to say that it's actually not obsolete. I'm going to quote him. He says, although the computer operation system and softwares of the current BVR need to be upgraded, components like fingerprints and scanners were very robust and fit for use. The enrollment software can easily be upgraded with facial recognition. The cost of upgrading the BVR equipment with new functionalities will be far cheaper than replacing them with a new equipment. So they've come out to debunk the whole notion that the old one is obsolete.
It is a swear against the EC.
Okay.
Because this is what the EC had said. Looking at the system, looking at the machines, looking at everything, they think even repairing it, taking it to servicing and things will cost us more, and they cannot even guarantee us the safe nature of the machines. That is what the EC is also saying. So it is their word against their word, the EC's word, and not mine. You understand? Now in 2016, we experienced some of the breakdown of some of these machines at our polling stations, where people who have been biometrically registered and were to go through this biometric verification for them to have access to voting, because they were not biometrically, what do you call this? They didn't go through the biometric system. They had to use the manual system in voting. You know, 2016, there are other constituencies that had to wait till the next morning and had to travel to the next day for them to vote. You see, we've come a long way, and I don't see anything wrong with us going and having a new system, new register for us to move on. Like we all know, democracy is very expensive, and this is the path that we've all chosen as a nation to go. Whatever it will entail for us to have a very smooth, free and fair election. We've gone through various forms of elections under this fourth Republican dispensation. Yes, there's still room for improvement. So there's nothing that stops us from also improving, upgrading whatever we're doing. So it was EC that is saying, look, and I quite remember, let me quote Kwekuba Akua on a sister station where he said, look, he cited a letter written by Madam Charlotte way back 2017, say that, look, they would need a new register for the next general election. When you saw the quick, this thing, people will easily move into that, oh, but it was the same register that elected Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Yes, but that doesn't mean we don't need a new register. Who says we don't need it? We are ever prepared, whether new or old, but we say, look, let's do away and get our system clean and have a clean, fresh register. Now they say, look, it's the same register that voted the district election, assembly elections. It's the same register that voted. In fact, we've gone through about 2 voting in this process. That does not mean that because we use this in 2016 and other subsequent elections, it doesn't call for a new voter register. I say, I am standing by the word of the EC. This is what she has witnessed. This is what they think. These are the records they have. They are working based on records available to them. And they think the time has come for them for us to have a new voter register. That is one thing the MPP has always called for. It is one thing we still stand by. We said we are ever ready. You know, there was something going out there that the EC was going to postpone the date for registration. They've come out with a statement, the banking that we are ever ready. If it's today, if it's tomorrow, we are set, we are ready for us to have a new voter register.
Okay, thank you. Joyce.
Thank you very much. I believe you do know that the EC actually is one of those constitutional bodies whose work and mandate actually are a part of our 1992 Constitution. Indeed, in their conduct of elections, there have been times when the EC has actually come up for enormous criticism. Indeed, at some point, due to all the challenges and differences in opinion, and sometimes when we have these conversations, it would have been great if you had past discourse regarding the work and activities of the Electoral Commission. Even in the wake of the exit on retirement of Dr. Farijan and the subsequent appointment of the Charlotte Osei-led Electoral Commission, our opponents at the time, who have now formed government, threatened hail and brimstone. There were all sorts of taunts and deep animosity the inter-party committee that actually was set up to try and broker and mediate these fallouts with regards to the work of the EC faced enormous difficulty even then. In the run-up to this process for the EC to go out and compile a new voter register, there have been many conversations. I believe that even the conversations between the EC and the IPAC for the first time fell through and they couldn't reach any mutual agreement. This was actually the very first time that I had seen such an open fallout between the Electoral Commission and, of course, the members of the inter-party committee. Eventually, government had to set up an advisory group made up of very distinguished stakeholders. What I'm hearing now is that even those stakeholders have called for further mediation or arbitration and even recommended a very popular arbitration institution to lead the matter. It means then that dialogue has failed to resolve the matters that people are actually concerned about. That some CSOs have come out very openly to criticize, first and foremost, the work of the Electoral Commission, the processes, above all, even question whether or not there is even a need to replace the equipment, be it the hardware or the software. I do know, for example, that a CSO, a SEPA, actually wrote to the suppliers of the current BV equipment, asking whether indeed the equipment were obsolete. And the response was very succinct, that the equipment was certainly not obsolete, that some parts may need to be replaced, but that is about it. I also recall that there was a good reason why in 2012 we migrated to the biometric voter register. It was first and foremost to ensure validation, to be sure that people's identities were authentic and people would register and you'd be sure that you could keep this database and use it over and over again. It was a whole process leading up to the migration. You know, sometimes you cannot help but question the motive behind some of these initiatives. Indeed, don't forget there was a special committee of parliament that even vetted the budget that the EC submitted. Note that at the time there was even a conversation that the national identification card would become the sole identity for people who wanted to go and register in the period of the limited registration exercises. In fact, I don't know what even happened to that whole conversation. You know, sometimes there is always a period when the work of a particular state institution would come under scrutiny. Sometimes you do a lot of these things over and over again. But there's a time when people think, hold on, let's go back and check. Let's investigate what exactly the Electoral Commission is doing. Look, we have all participated in elections in other jurisdictions. I am yet to hear that anywhere in this world there is such rumpus that greets the work of the Electoral Commission, where the EC is almost in the faces of the citizens every day, whether it's in defense, whether it's in needless conversations, whether it's even in defense mode. I think that no matter what your mandate is, transparency and accountability of the EC must at any given day be utmost on the calendar of the EC.
But why do we keep buying new equipment? Because Imani Africa says since 2011 we keep buying.
That's the question.
Shouldn't we be investing in some long-term equipment?
Asking. And if it is about a long-term equipment, hardware, software, a new database, a new voter register, why don't we come out clearly with a position paper, indicate completely that these are the existing processes. This is the reason why we think we should be migrating to something that is more sustainable. Make cogent arguments that will at least make sense to the good people of Ghana. The money that you are expending are taxpayers' money. If the story being told by the National Democratic Congress, by other key members of society, led by Imani, the question is, why will Imani even put their credibility on the line for a matter of this nature? In times past, when they criticized the work of the National Democratic Congress, at the time when John Mahama was president. I don't remember anybody coming out per se to say or criticize them. In fact, most often than not, CSOs and opposition voices would normally sing from the same hymn book because they are the ones that hold governments in check. They would at least spend time doing some due diligence because normally what happens is that once the EC decides I'm going to do this, naturally, and in this case in particular, government has almost totally revamped the heads of the Electoral Commission. It is also in their interest to support them to be sure that people do not unnecessarily attack the body. Look, there are constituencies that need new polling areas. These are all parts of the job of the EC. Indeed, in the matter of the Abu Ramadan case, the Supreme Court even directed in the aftermath of the election petition for these polling stations to be created across the country. We have 6 new regions. New polling areas in those regions would also have to be demarcated. There is a lot of work that I think the EC should be focusing on beyond procurement.
Okay.
And note, you can go and check. Information reaching me, and I think it is reliable information, is that even the company that has currently been shortlisted or awarded this contract is a company that is already operating under a cloud.
Well, they've been blacklisted by the World
Absolutely,
Bank.
Exactly. You know, sometimes I think that government institutions must accept and acknowledge that being accountable to the people is part of their responsibility, that they are obliged, because of their being sponsored by the taxpayer, to report to the good people of Ghana on their activities, to even validate reasons why they undertake certain decisions. I think on this occasion, the Electoral Commission is not an island.
Okay. So Imani is saying that, well, they are accusing this company of allegedly being blacklisted by the World Bank. They're also saying that EC itself has spent about $40 million on the current system since 2016. I'm reading actually from page 4 of the Chronicle, page 3 of the Chronicle, and they're saying here that Imani says in 2016 we refurbished 7,500 BVRs and bought 40,000 BVDs at a cost of several millions. And in 2018, the EC bought 2,000 BVRs and more BVDs. And now in 2020, we want to spend $72 million buying a brand new system. Joyce, do you think EC has done enough to really explain to the Ghanaian people and stakeholders on why we need this new system?
I think they've explained, they've given us explanation. It is how you want to take it. It lies in the individual's bosom whether to accept whatever they are telling us or not. Okay. You understand? Yeah, it's either be for or against whatever they are saying. It matters how much they can convince you to come on board with them. So I think this, yes, like Imani is saying, we know. We can say, you know, it cost us almost about $2 million to refurbish the machines even before then. Yeah, before the General Assembly, you understand, the Assembly elections. And you ask yourself, why do you have to keep spending so much on a particular machine when at least you can do away with that and have a new thing? Okay. Why is it that in life, you always say that, look, you can't always hold on to the old. At least there are times you need to do away and get new things because there are new technology, there are new things coming up, and you need to also update yourself.
Even when you have limited resources?
Why do you say limited resources?
Well, we're a developing country.
Of course, and democracy is very expensive, so you make sure that you are able to touch hold of everything that you are determined to do. Okay. So we can't say because we are developing. Yes, throughout our democratic dispensation, yes, there's been we are under-resourced. There are still more roads to be built. There are still more schools to be built. There's a lot of hospitals to be built. Yet we go out to do other things. Do we say because we have to build all schools, we don't do other projects? Are we saying because we have to build new hospitals, elections will not come on? Yes, 2016, 2012, there were still schools that we need to construct. There were still roads that we need to build. Yet we spent money to buy machines for us to go through the elections. Come what may, at each point in time, there will be priorities to other things that we need to do in life. So I don't see this as a new thing. I don't see this as overspending. I can't just get it because it's about democracy. And I made mention this. I did say this thing. Somebody got me around that. Look, we know what elections have the occurrences or the happenings in other regions, sub-regions, where they think the elections did not go down well with them and all things. We know what it entails. Let's just have a clean system. We have gone through a lot. We have, in fact, wherever we meet ourselves, we need to pat ourselves at our back, say that, look, when it's getting to elections, the kind of picture painted out there, the kind of agitations, thinking that, oh, this election is going to break this country. But we sailed through it. I don't think buying a new voter machines to get a new voter register is going to break this country. Why would it?
At a loss of $150
loss,
million.
Are you saying loss?
No,
it is not
Africa.
at a loss, because
okay.
if we have to spend so much to make sure that our democracy thrives, why not?
Okay, so we'll take a look at our final
why not?
But I think, Dziffa, beyond cost of democracy, is that there is a certain process that has taken place that has not been adequately transparent.
How so?
That people believe that there is a certain overpricing or have reasonable grounds to believe so. I think that the question we are asking is that the EC must come clean.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll take
categorically how much this process is costing. And if you notice, there were comparisons even to the cost of similar upgrading in other jurisdictions. Yeah. I think that there are some questions that the EC ought to be answering beyond our politics and our democracy and all of that. Indeed, democracy has always been expensive, but I believe that democracy also comes at a cost. And there should be a certain...
Some diligence.
Absolutely, that is important. And it's also a responsibility of the EC to come out and be more diligent, to actually show cause why this is the cost that they are going to be expending, even to tell us what and the reasons why it is so expensive. Apart from that, tell us even the evaluation that was done and why you would end up selecting a company whose track record cannot be said to be anything to write home about.
Okay, thank you very much.
And this is a matter that is of a public record. Okay. I think that is really what the conversation is about, at least what the NDC is saying. And I think that even in the days when the NDC was in government, if you recall, the two political parties were able to come to a certain agreement in terms of the work of the same EC, with Supreme Court judgments and all of that. But this has never, such acrimony, I am yet to have experienced it. Something is not right with this current procurement process. And I don't think I want us to belabor the point and reduce it to a question of subject matter of democracy.
Okay, thank you very much. I do have to wrap you up for the final topic. I read it from page 2 of the Custodian. It says, MPA boss jabs NDC over fuel prices. The chief executive of the National Petroleum Authority, Mr. Hassan Tampoli, has described a call by the opposition NDC for government to immediately reduce prices of petroleum products as premature. So I'm going to quote what he said. He said the MPA boss noted in an interview granted by Sami Jemfi, during which he made this call, was entirely gibberish, stating that 98% of all the things he said were just false. He goes on to say that the average price of products is calculated at the beginning of the pricing window from the 1st of the month to the 15th and from the 16th to the 30th of the month. So the average price from the 1st of the month to the 15th is calculated. So he's saying that, you know, the Samit Jemfi, who's the National Communications Officer of NDC, had it wrong with what he said as far as government decreasing fuel prices. Your thoughts on this?
Oh, I see. Okay, this is when you know that this is just the usual politics.
Not really.
So basically,
Samit Jemfi could have gotten it wrong. So
we all know this is a matter of fact.
Okay.
That crude prices the world over have gone down by some 50%. All Samit Jemfi is asking for is that we've waited 1 week, it's almost 2 weeks now. Can we see similar reductions in our pumps across the country?
And the MPA boss is saying,
and note that initially,
the middle of the month.
Initially, the MPA boss had come out to say that he did not think that any reductions were possible at this time.
Okay.
Subsequently, he has come out to say that there could possibly be a 15% reduction, but it would have to come at a certain point when the deregulation kicks in. You see, we are all in Ghana. We know what is simply politics. We know what the reality is.
Okay.
Before the MPP formed its government, if you remember, there was always this conversation around lazy approaches to making money or government business through taxes, etc. Look, I have just checked on the types of levies that still exist. We have the Energy Debt Recovery Levy, we have the Road Fund Levy, we have the Energy Fund Levy, we have the Price Stabilization Levy, we have the Special Petroleum Tax. From time immemorial, even when I was at school, Kwesi Pratt has always been on government's case about these levies and taxes that unduly make fuel prices expensive. We have had this conversation around deregulation because don't forget, in the past, by this time, governments will be held to ransom about the cost escalations in terms of petroleum and petroleum products. This is a part of the economy that drives everything in this country. And yesterday, I'm sure you heard reports that despite the government's policy of planting for foods and all the money that has been expended in promoting planting for foods, that food prices have continued to increase. It is also possible that the cost of the petroleum products are probably driving this increase in cost of food. Because cost of transportation will definitely always go up.
So we should all wait to the 16th to see the changes.
So that your opponent or the opposition will draw your attention to a matter that is of a public record.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with
Thank
that.
you. So
I'm sure Mr. Hassan Tampoli would have done worse in his time.
Zempare on this.
Well, before I touch on that, let me draw my sister back down in memory lane where she said she saw head of any acrimony around the EC. Let me take her to the famous change of the logo.
Really want us to
okay, let's come back to the...
I only want to give her one point.
That's fine. No, we're not going to have that conversation.
We saw it and we loved it.
That's fine. Let's go on to...
I went there, I saw it and I love it.
Do you have anything to say about Sami Jemfi? Okay, go ahead.
Why not? The insults that you make on that individual. If she were your sister or your daughter,
Bawah,
would you have felt at the time? I don't remember you coming out to defend it.
Let's allow Joyce Zempare make her point. Go ahead.
Don't go there.
That's fine.
You were saying you've not heard of any acrimony.
It's okay. So I'm going to end it now.
Oh, you can't end it.
We just have 1 minute
You're not
left.
giving me the...
We have 1 minute. Okay, please go
In fact,
ahead.
today you've even punished me by
Please go ahead.
Don't let me tell.
1 minute. Okay, you have 1 minute.
Yeah. We've heard the NPA boss saying that, look, the review of petroleum pricing is always done bi-weekly, so he's giving us up to 16th of March. So I say we'll wait to see what he's giving us, at least about 15%. So we'll wait to see. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Joyce Zempare is the Deputy National Communications Director of the MPP, and Joyce Mogtari is a special aide to former President John Mahama. Thank you both so much for being with us.
Thank you, Dziffa, and I do hope that in commemoration of International Women's Day, next time there's a female under such fire, Joyce will be out there defending the Breakfast Day.
We'll be right back.
We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, and share with your friends. This is Breakfast Daily on Citi TV.
Join the Breakfast Daily team Monday through Fridays from 7:30 a.m. to 10. Join us for breakfast daily, only on Citi TV.